The office door shut behind me with that soft, corporate click, final, nonchalant, like punctuation at the end of a bad sentence. "Close the door," Charles had said. So I did. I walked across his sleek, sterile office, my heels quiet against the polished wood, and sat. He didn't look up from his laptop. I waited. After a moment, he leaned back in his chair and folded his hands behind his head. "You're upset." My jaw tightened, but I smiled. "I'm listening." He chuckled, like we were in on a joke together. "You're always so composed. It's eerie sometimes." "Is that the issue?" "No. The issue is you keep making things an issue." I tilted my head. "You'll have to be more specific." He stood and moved toward the glass wall overlooking the city, hands in his pockets. "Perfectly casual. The junior dev team last week. You flagged Jason's code audit. Privately, but it didn't stay private, did it?" "I flagged a risk to product ethics. Right?" He turned, expression amused. "You love that word. Ethics makes you sound noble. But let me give you some advice, Elena." I didn't move. "No one cares." There it was. The smile, the certainty, the soft lilt of condescension. "No one cares," he repeated, walking back to his desk. "About flagged code, about credit on slide decks, about tone in Slack messages. These are internal things. You make too much of them. I document problems before they become liabilities." He sat. "You make people uncomfortable." I let that hang in the air for a second. "Because I don't pretend not to see what's there. Because you're always watching, always waiting to call something out. That's not leadership. Neither is silencing people who do." His smirk faltered for just a beat. "Let me be clear. Your role here is valued when it stays quiet." He leaned forward. "When it supports the team, not when it undermines trust. And who defines that trust?" "Elena." His voice dropped, almost gentle. "Pick your battles." I stood slowly. My hands stayed steady. "I already have." He didn't reply. I opened the door and stepped into the hallway, where the carpet muffled every step like nothing had ever happened. At my desk, I sat, calmly, back straight, hands in my lap. My screen blinked with untouched messages. My inbox overflowed, but I couldn't see any of it. Not yet, because I already knew. I would never forget those words. My phone buzzed. A Slack ping from Priya. "You okay?" I typed back. "Fine." A lie, but the kind I'd perfected. Across the office, Charles was laughing with someone, one of the VPs. Nothing about his body language said conflict had just occurred. He was good at that, at pretending lines hadn't been crossed while others were still standing in the wreckage. I pulled out my notebook. Not the corporate-issued one. The leather one I kept for myself, tucked inside my drawer. No logos. No time-stamped branding, just pages I controlled. I wrote his words down. "No one cares." Then I wrote the date, the meeting title, and what had led to it. My private report on the algorithmic irregularity in Jason's code, which was quietly overridden and removed from record. No paper trail except mine. "Elena." A voice. Soft, urgent. Priya stood beside my desk, a cup of coffee in her hands, offering it like a peace flag. "You didn't deserve that," she said under her breath. "It's fine," I said again. My voice sounded measured, professional. "It's not." She glanced toward the glass office. "He wants compliance, not intelligence." "I know." Her eyes searched mine. "You're not going to just let it go, are you?" "No." A flicker of something passed between us. Not alliance, not yet, but recognition. Then she nodded, turned, and walked away. I took the coffee and placed it beside my monitor. I didn't sip it. Instead, I opened a clean document on my personal cloud folder, one labeled simply observation. I started typing. Summary of meeting. Charles Reddick, Friday. 10 a.m. direct quote. No one cares. Context. Response to ethics flag on internal audit. Tone. Dismissive. Instructive. Reprimanding. I saved it. Then I sat very still and watched the cursor blink in silence. They thought I was quiet because I didn't speak. They hadn't yet seen what I sound like when I write. Asterisk when I was 12. I learned how to disappear in plain sight. My mother called it grace. My father called it discipline. I called it survival. I never raised my voice. Never cried in public. I learned to breathe through insult and walk through doors without looking back, which is probably why Charles assumed I'd let his words fade into the air like every other woman he'd dismissed before me. He didn't know what I kept. Elena, he'd said once, years ago, you're the kind of woman who makes things better without making noise. He meant it as a compliment. I let him think I took it that way. Now, at my desk, I clicked open a shared doc. The comms calendar blinked back. Strategy bullet points. Launch sequence. I knew it all by heart. My body moved through the motions, mouse scrolling, fingers typing. But my mind wasn't there. It was here, replaying the moment he looked at me across his office with those flat, patronizing eyes and decided I was irrelevant. Pick your battles, he said. This wasn't a battle, it was a memory forming, hard and sharp, already etching itself into me. At 1:10 p.m., I stood, walked calmly to the kitchen. Long day, someone asked. I think it was Max from product. Just steady, I replied. I filled a mug with hot water and dropped a chamomile tea bag in. My hands didn't shake. I stared out the window as the bag darkened the cup, bleeding color slowly. Elena. Priya again. Quiet, careful. I turned. She stepped closer. Are you? I'm fine. She hesitated. He does this. You know that, right? I know. People notice. That stopped me. Do they? Her lips parted, then closed. She looked down at her tea. Some of us do. Silence settled between us. I waited and finally. She said, he treated Lena the same way. Before she left, I nodded once. I remember. No one talked about it. They never do. She looked up. Will you? My tea was still too hot to drink. Eventually, we didn't say goodbye, just turned away at the same time, like dancers exiting opposite sides of the stage. I returned to my desk. My screen glowed. My face reflected in it calm, precise, unreadable. I had spent my entire adult life crafting that face, and now I knew exactly what to do with it. Asterisk at home. I kicked off my shoes and locked the door behind me. The apartment was quiet, just the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft whir of the air vent in the hallway. My sanctuary of silence. I opened my laptop. There was a folder I hadn't touched in over a year, archive_personal. Inside it, a document labeled simply, if it ever comes to that. I clicked it open. The cursor blinked at the end of the last paragraph I'd written after an HR review. That Charles had quietly crushed. I started a new line. He said, no one cares. He wanted it to end there. It didn't. The knock on the wall from the neighbor's broom startled me. I hadn't realized the chair scraped when I shifted. I closed my eyes, old habit. Disappear, new decision. Don't. I pulled out the journal. The leather one. Wrote. No one cares. But I do. And that's enough for now. The next morning, I got to the office before anyone else. Charles's door was closed. Priya hadn't arrived yet. I walked to the kitchen, brewed strong black coffee, and came back with 2 mugs, one for her, one for me. When she walked in 10 minutes later, she looked surprised. You okay? She asked again. I handed her the mug. We don't have to talk. But we will. Not now. But soon. She held the mug. You're not backing off. I shook my head. Her smile was small. Good. At 9:15, Charles strolled in, late as always. Phone pressed to his ear, laughing too loudly at something no one else could hear. His gaze slid past me like I wasn't there. I didn't flinch. He thought I hadn't changed. He was wrong. What I never told anyone was this: the calmest person in the room isn't always the weakest. Sometimes she's just the one writing the story. And this one was mine. ***. The first time Charles praised me, it was in front of the entire executive team. He used words like indispensable and exceptional. I remember the room going quiet, his voice filling it like warm light. That was 3 years ago. Now he barely acknowledged my presence. It didn't happen all at once. That's the thing with erosion, you don't notice it until something collapses. I started seeing the shift after a product launched last winter. I'd written the release strategy, built the messaging plan, even stayed up all night fixing a data leak no one else had noticed. At the all hands, Charles smiled at the crowd and said, "Couldn't have done it without the product team's hustle and Jason's fast work under pressure." No mention of communications. No mention of me. I clapped anyway. Later, I found him by the coffee machine. "Nice call out," I said, voice light. He grinned. They needed the spotlight more. And the rest of us. He shrugged. "You're consistent. I don't have to worry about you." I laughed then, quietly. He thought it was a compliment. I let him. But that was when I started writing things down. 6 months later, I noticed I was no longer in the Monday briefings. The invite disappeared from my calendar. No explanation. I asked Priya, casually, "You still in those?" She nodded. "Aren't you?" "Nope." Her brow furrowed. "You used to lead them." I remember. I saw the flicker of concern in her eyes. She didn't say anything more. But the next week, she looped me into a thread Charles had left me off. On purpose, no doubt. "Thought you might want to weigh in," she wrote. I replied, "Thanks. Good catch." In the lunchroom, 2 junior analysts were whispering. They stopped. When I walked in, one of them Ben flushed. "Hey, Elena. We were just talking about the Q to deck." I smiled. "What about it?" He hesitated. "Charles said it was all his." My stomach didn't move. "Did he?" "He said he pulled an all-nighter." I nodded. "Impressive." Ben lowered his voice. "You wrote it, right?" I didn't answer, just looked at him until he dropped his gaze. I heated my soup in silence. They left. I ate with the calm of a woman whose hands knew the exact pressure needed to break glass. *** later. That week, Charles walked past my desk and tapped twice on the wood. "Quick sync?" I followed him to the conference room. Glass walls. Too transparent for truth, but perfect for performance. He sat. Didn't offer me a seat. I sat anyway. "I've been hearing tension," he began, smoothing his tie. "From whom?" "Just feedback. You've seemed detached lately." I held his gaze, detached or observant. He laughed. Let's not get philosophical. What's the actual concern? He leaned forward. I need you in alignment with leadership. If you start acting like an outsider, people notice. I am leadership. There was a pause. Not long. Just enough. Don't take it personally, he said. You've always been solid. But lately, you're too in the weeds. I'm the one who keeps the weeds from choking the product. He smiled again. Let's stay solutions-oriented, Elena. Sure. Here's a solution credit where it's due. Now's not the time to push your name to the front. I didn't ask to be first. Just visible. He stood. Let's circle back next week. I stood too. Let's not. He blinked. Excuse me. I opened the door. I'm busy enough leading the parts of this team that still function. And I left. That night, I got a message from Priya. He's starting to slip. Be careful. I replied. Noted. The next morning, I arrived early. I printed two versions of the cue to strategy deck, mine, time-stamped, and his, with my name scrubbed. I slid them into a folder labeled Rhetoric Adjustments. Then I locked it in my drawer. When Priya walked in, I handed her coffee. Black. No sugar. She looked at me. What's this? Evidence. She took it slowly. You're not walking away, are you? I shook my head. I'm just done playing quiet. And for the first time in a long time, she smiled like it meant something. The office was nearly empty by 7. Most people had gone home. But Priya was still at her desk, eyes locked on her monitor, one hand pinching the bridge of her nose. Priya, I said softly, walking past the rows of darkened cubicles. You okay? She didn't look up. Can you come here a second? I crossed the room. What is it? She clicked her mouse once, twice, then swiveled her screen slightly toward me. Look at this. It was back-end code, dense, dry, unreadable to most. But I'd worked with enough developers to recognize the structure. I saw a string labeled user underscore ranking underscore modifier. Whose code is this? Jason's. From which release? Beta. For the new hiring algorithm. The one that's supposed to go live next month. I leaned in. What am I looking at? She pulled up the audit log. This line adjusts scores based on an input labeled background heuristic. My eyes scanned the logic. Background. It's pulling from social markers, zip code, school prestige, work history, patterning things that shouldn't weigh someone down. And it's deducting points. Yes. And the adjustment is hard-coded, not adaptive. It's not even learning, it's burying. I felt something cold settle beneath my ribs. Why didn't this flag earlier? It did, she said, voice lower. I flagged it last week. Jason closed the ticket. Closed it. Said it was within parameters. That's a lie. She turned to face me now, her expression hard. I know. I crossed my arms. You said you flagged it. Internal ethics channel. But nothing happened. So I looked closer. My voice dropped. Do you have access to earlier commits? She nodded. I pulled the change log. I watched as she brought up a table of edits. The original version had no modifier. The change came 2 weeks ago. Time-stamped. Authored by Jason Lin. Approved by Charles Reddick. I said nothing. Priya whispered, You see it, right? I met her eyes. Yeah, I see it. We sat in silence for a moment. The lights above flickered into their energy-saving mode, casting the room in a dim haze. Why would they bury this? I asked. Priya exhaled. Because if it launches and no one knows, it passes. Cleaner resumes. Shinier applicants. No noise. But it's profiling, Elena. Quiet profiling. And it violates every public claim we've made about fairness and equity. She nodded slowly. You think Charles doesn't know? My eyes didn't leave the screen. He signed off on it. Exactly. I reached into my bag, pulled out a flash drive, and held it in my palm. You backing this up? She asked. I handed it to her. You are? She took it without a word. When I finally spoke, my voice was calm. Don't send it anywhere yet. Just hold it. We don't move until we know what they'll do next. She nodded, her jaw tight. They'll bury it deeper. Then we dig slower, smarter. As we shut down the machines, Priya asked, what happens if this gets out? I didn't answer until we were walking through the parking lot, the wind lifting the edge of my coat. It won't just be Charles, I said. It'll hit the board, the investors. The story writes itself: algorithmic bias, deliberate manipulation, ethical compromise. And us, we become a liability. She paused. That scares me. Good? It should. We reached her car. Before she got in, she said, thanks for not brushing me off. I'm listening now, I said. I should have done it sooner. Better now than never. She left. I stood alone in the lot a while longer. That night, I reopened my file. A new entry code flag. Priya's find. Jason's edit. Charles's approval. Ethics breach confirmed. I saved it. Then I turned off the light. I didn't sleep, but I didn't need to. People who bury things forget. Someone is always watching where they dig. It started with a single folder labeled drafts. I had created it 2 years ago, after Charles reworded one of my press releases, stripped the nuance, and sent it out with his name on the distribution list. That morning, he'd walked by my desk and said, perfect timing, Elena. Thanks for the backup. I said nothing, but I made a copy. Now, that folder had grown. It lived in a secure drive, double encrypted, backed up to an account only I had access to. Inside were things they thought they'd deleted: meeting recordings, email chains, Slack screenshots, calendar invites that vanished, then reappeared with different names. I didn't start collecting them for revenge. I started because gaslighting only works if you don't keep receipts. At 8 a.m. sharp, I arrived at the office. Charles wasn't in yet. I plugged in my drive and started cataloging metadata, timestamps, cross-references. Priya's discovery made everything sharper. The pattern was suddenly visible, not just intuitive. It wasn't in my head. Jason's flagged code. Charles's within parameters reply. My removed name from project summaries. The cancelled invites. I created a new folder. Pattern _ proof. Inside it, I dropped Q to deck version history performance reviews with redacted feedback email threads about the hiring algorithm, deleted Slack messages recovered through notification ch file named with the date and a short description. I didn't trust memory anymore. I wanted numbers. I wanted time. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. By lunchtime, the folder had 76 files. At 1:17 p.m., I added the audio clip. It was from a meeting last quarter. Charles had joked to the VP of marketing, Elena polishes everything I say, makes me sound like a CEO instead of a chainsaw. They laughed. I'd laughed, too. But I'd pressed record on my phone just before they started talking. I'd labeled it chainsaw joke. Now it sat neatly between 2 project files. Archived but not forgotten. Hey. I looked up. Priya. stood beside my desk, a brown paper bag in her hand. Brought you something. I took it. Sandwich. Still warm, she leaned in. How deep are you going? I met her eyes. As far as I have to. Just be careful. I nodded. Always. She tapped the top of my monitor. Save often. Save everywhere. When she walked away, I uploaded everything to my secondary cloud. Then I opened a new document. I called it narrative. In it, I began writing dates, links, summaries. My voice. My point of view, not for anyone else. Not yet, but for the day I'd need to say. I was there. This happened. You can't erase it. At 5:30 p.m. Charles passed by on his way out. Late again? He said. Just wrapping up. He didn't slow. Don't work too hard. I smiled. Wouldn't dream of it. He kept walking. But I stayed. Sometimes silence is just a place where evidence grows. And I had a garden now. The cue to strategy meeting started at 9 a.m. sharp. Charles entered the room with his usual practiced confidence, sleeves rolled up just enough to signal command without arrogance. Morning, team, he said, tapping his laptop awake. Let's make this fast. We've got product updates at 11. Everyone took their seats. I sat near the wall, not at the table. That was new. No one questioned it. He launched the deck. My deck. The transitions. The embedded charts. The risk slide that took me 3 hours to fine-tune. All of it flicked past, without a single glance in my direction. Now here's where we tighten spend, he said, pointing to a budget graph I'd built, realigning resources to drive top-line growth. Heads nodded. Notes were scribbled. Even Priya, seated 3 chairs away, caught my eye briefly, then looked down. Not complicity, just survival. When someone asked about the internal messaging plan, Charles smiled. I've got something in the works, he said. We'll have a full package ready by Friday. Something in the works. I delivered it to his inbox yesterday morning. I wrote the sentence in my notebook. We'll have a full package ready. I added the timestamp. 9:22 a.m. By 9:45, the presentation ended. Nice work, someone said. Charles accepted the praise with a nod, as if he'd carved the strategy from stone with his own hands. I stood to leave. No one stopped me. No one thanked me. And for the first time, I didn't feel small, I felt clear. Back at my desk. I opened the shared drive and downloaded the meeting recording. I watched Charles's gestures, his pacing, the confident way he borrowed my words without blinking. I saved the video under a new label, Q to _strategy_theft. At noon, Priya appeared beside me with a post-it note in hand. Lunch? She asked. I shook my head. Not hungry. She slid the note onto my keyboard, written in her tight handwriting. You deserved credit. I saw everything. I didn't smile, but I folded the note and placed it in my journal. By mid-afternoon, my plan was forming, quiet, sharp-edged. I wasn't going to confront him with anger. That's what he'd expect. That's what he'd dismiss. I would let him build his house higher. Then I'd show the missing beams. At 4:15, he passed my desk. Great meeting today, he said. Breezy. Thanks, I replied. Glad it was useful. He paused. Useful. The deck. He tilted his head. Oh, right. Appreciate the support. That was it. Not even a flicker of embarrassment. I stared at my screen as he walked away. I wasn't erased. I was being overwritten. But I had backups now. And soon, so would everyone else. It started with coffee. I messaged Lena Moreno. On a Wednesday afternoon, she had left the company almost a year ago without a goodbye post, without a ripple, just vanished. Lena Ellen Award. I hope this isn't unwelcome. I'd like to ask you something. Coffee? Her reply came within the hour. Thought you'd never ask. Tomorrow, we met at a quiet cafe on 6th, neutral territory. She arrived 5 minutes early, already seated, already watching. Black, no sugar. She said as I sat. Still the same? I smiled. Always. Her eyes were sharp. So, Charles? I didn't flinch. Yes. She leaned back. He finally come for you? I stirred my coffee. He thinks he has. She nodded once. Slow. It starts subtle. Praise, exposure, visibility. Then it turns. Credit vanishes. Meetings shift. Suddenly you're on the outside of things you built. My throat tightened. Why didn't anyone say anything? Because HR doesn't listen, and most people want their jobs more than they want justice. I'm not most people. No, she said, smiling faintly. You're not. I slid a small envelope across the table. Inside, printouts of emails, audit logs, the modifier code Priya found. Lena didn't touch it. Is this your strategy? This is my foundation. She looked up. Then let's start digging. We walked to blocks after coffee, away from the cafe, just in case. Lena didn't speak again until we reached her car. After I left, she said, unlocking the door, to other women reached out. One from marketing, one from legal. Names? She shook her head. Not yet, but they'd talk. Off record. Was it the same pattern? Exactly the same. Praise, then exclusion. One of them reported him for retaliation. The complaint disappeared. I stared at the pavement. HR buried it, said it was a communication style. Conflict. I exhaled. He's built insulation. Lena nodded. But even insulation frays when too many people lean in. That night, I created a new folder. Past cases. I filled it with Lena's timeline, cross-checked calendar records, a screenshot of her exit interview date. No notes attached, just the time stamp. 36 minutes. For a 3-year tenure at 10:43 p.m., I drafted 3 anonymous messages. I'm looking into a pattern of credit suppression and retaliation. You're not alone. I sent them to former employees on LinkedIn. Carefully. Soft language. No accusation. Just opening the door by morning. To have responded. I know what you're talking about. Call me. The whisper network wasn't just real. It was awake, and it remembered everything. I once read that memory lies. That trauma reshapes it. But I don't believe that anymore. Not when I can feel every moment inside me like ledgers waiting to be tallied at 6 a.m. I opened a fresh document. I labeled it. Behavioral chronology. Rhetoric. Not evidence. Not yet. Just record. June 14th. My strategy plan presented under Charles's name. June 22nd. Removed from executive sync without explanation. July 7th. Meeting feedback. To direct. Not collaborative. No examples provided, the pattern wrote itself. I didn't embellish. I didn't dramatize, just dates. Context. Language. I included the adjectives he used in reviews. Stoic, clinical, intimidating. I typed them slowly, each one like a bruise surfacing at 9 o'clock. I added a section for tone phrases repeated in different meetings. You're too smart to worry about credit. No one likes a spotlight hog. We need people who blend in. He said all of them, usually with a smile, usually in front of others at 10:37 a.m. I stopped writing and stared out the window. It was sunny. The kind of day that doesn't feel like injustice should fit inside it. But it does. And I kept writing. Asterisk by noon, the document had 12 pages. I categorized behaviors into 3 types: dismissal, ignoring input, removing responsibilities without notice, erasure, taking credit, rewriting authorship, control, language meant to box me in, make me small. I added an appendix titled Emotional Aftermath. Not dramatic, just real. Felt heat behind my eyes. Did not cry. Pulse accelerated. When he said you're overreacting, began triple-checking emails before sending. Fear of being misread. Apologized in Slack for speaking too often. I documented it like science because for me, it was a pattern, a system of power. At 3 p.m., I took a break, walked to the far end of the office where the windows opened wide onto the skyline. Priya stood there already, arms folded. You look tired, she said. I'm awake. She glanced at me. You're not waiting anymore, are you? No. She reached into her bag and handed me a manila folder. What is it? Meeting notes. From the calls you weren't invited to. I took it without speaking. I didn't need to ask how she got them. We returned to our desks. I logged the documents she gave me, scanned the notes, added them to the ledger. At 5:45, I saved the file. The subject line was simple. FW. FYI audit chain. I was at home when it came through. 8:14 p.m. A Thursday. The city lights outside my window shimmered like they were waiting for something. The sender, Priya. The attached file, a forwarded message from Jason Lin to Charles. I opened it. We can't push this live until the modifier is hidden better. Too risky to disclose in current form. Charles's reply came 2 minutes later. No one cares. Bury it. I stared at the words. They didn't shock me. Not anymore. But they confirmed what I needed. He'd said it again. Not to me this time but to Jason. In writing. Blunt, arrogant, unfiltered. I clicked save as. Named the file. C_Redick_internal_bias_quote. I opened my ledger, scrolled to the entry for May 11th, the code change date. I added May 11th, confirmation from internal thread, suppression directive issued by CR. See attached. I sat back. There it was. The moment the damage became undeniable. The moment it became a risk not just to my dignity, but to the company itself. *******. The next morning, I walked into the office early. The file still sat on my drive, untouched. Radioactive at 8:46 a.m. I printed a single-page Charles's No One Cares. Bury it. I didn't mark it or highlight it. I slipped it into a blank folder. I walked it to Priya's desk. She didn't say anything. She just opened it after a long beat. She whispered, "That's it." I nodded. Her fingers tapped nervously against her mug. "What are you going to do with it?" "Build a mirror. To show them. To show him." Her voice dropped. "You think he'll care?" I looked at her. No. But someone will. Later that day, I emailed myself a secure link from a burner cloud. Then I opened a blank document titled Phase 2, Leverage. At 2 p.m., Charles called a team sync. He wore a navy jacket, no tie. Polished. Charming. "Thanks for pushing hard this week," he said to the group. "We're close to something big." I said nothing. When he glanced my way, I met his eyes and smiled. Not politely. Strategically, he smiled back, unaware, because the moment he'd sent that email, those 4 words, he'd handed me everything I needed. He just didn't know it yet. I started with a folder. Inside it, I placed 3 files. The original flag code string Priya uncovered. Jason's email expressing concern. Charles's reply. No one cares. Bury it. Then I added the appendix from my ledger. The entries with time stamps, quotes, the pattern of exclusion. I called the folder Reflective Glass. I didn't rush. I didn't rage. I built slowly, deliberately, like someone assembling a mechanism that couldn't be disarmed once. Triggered at 11:42 a.m., I called Jules Hartman. We hadn't spoken in 2 years. Not since her expose on the biotech firm that manipulated cancer drug data to spike stock prices. She picked up after 2 rings. Elena Ward. That's a surprise. I've got something, I said. Tech sector. Algorithmic bias. Internal. Suppression. Pause. You want to go on record? Not yet. You sure this is real? I'm sending you a sanitized packet. Send it. I clicked the encrypted link and uploaded a redacted version, no names, just dates, language, and the buried code logic. She texted me an hour later. I want the full story. When you're ready. At 3 p.m. I met Mara Klein in a corner booth at a bakery no one from the company knew. She was already sipping an espresso when I arrived. Her hair was longer, her blazer sharp as ever. You said it was urgent, she said. I slid the folder across the table. I need you to look at our NDA. She opened it. Read in silence. Her eyes narrowed. This is sloppily written, she said. They overreached. How so? They tried to bind you from disclosing any internal operations, even post-termination. But it's not enforceable, especially if it involves illegal or unethical conduct. I exhaled. Mara leaned in. You have leverage. What's your move? Transparency. To the public. To someone who knows what to do with it. Media? Eventually. She tapped the folder. You're not doing this for money. No. Then why? I met her eyes. Because truth is quieter than scandal, but it lasts longer. She studied me for a moment. Okay. I'll draft a memo. You'll be protected. That night, I updated my folder one last time. I added a new doc. Title, purpose. Inside, I wrote, I don't want to destroy him. I want him to see himself. And I want the world to understand what that looks like. I signed the NDA when I returned after my sabbatical. It was thick with legalese 3 pages of proprietary protection and non-disclosure of internal methods. I remember Charles handing it to me like it was a formality. Just sign and date, he said. Nothing unusual. I didn't argue. I needed the job then. But now, as Mara flipped through the document under the lamplight of her kitchen table, I saw it differently. They were arrogant, she said. This clause contradicts federal protections. You're allowed to report unethical practices. You're even allowed to speak to the press so long as you're not revealing trade secrets. I pointed to a paragraph halfway down. That's the one they used to scare people. She read it aloud. Disclosure of any internal conversation, meeting content, or personnel evaluations is prohibited in perpetuity. That's vague. Too vague. So it wouldn't hold up. And they know it. Then why include it? To intimidate. They assume no one will question it. I tapped the table. That's their mistake. Mara looked up at me. Are you ready to make them regret it? My voice didn't rise. I already am. The next day. I logged in early and opened the company policy drive. They'd updated the NDA template last quarter, new language, tighter wording, but mine had been signed before that. I pulled both versions side by side. My clause, vague and overreaching. Theirs now, more specific, legally cautious. They knew the old one was weak. They just didn't expect anyone to notice. I saved both copies and forwarded them to Mara. They changed it. I wrote. Of course they did. She replied at 2:30 p.m. I saw Charles by the elevator, laughing with the legal director. He didn't look worried. He looked untouchable. I walked past without slowing, back at my desk. I added a new tab in my ledger. Risk map. It tracked every attempt to isolate, gaslight, deflect. I included the NDA, not as a limit, but as evidence. By 5 p.m., I had my draft response prepared. If they threatened, I would push back with precedent, language, and legal backing. They built that NDA to silence people, but silence had an expiration date, and mine just ran out. Asterisk. The article dropped on a Monday. No name, no company logo, just a headline in Jules Hartman's clipped, deliberate voice. Bias by design. How one algorithm decides who gets in. The piece was surgical. Screenshots of modified code, a timeline of internal decisions, expert commentary on ethical violations. No speculation, just architecture. I read it twice before 7 a.m. Then I got dressed. At 9 o'clock sharp, I walked into the office. The tension hit like humidity, silent, heavy, impossible to ignore. Charles wasn't in yet, but the buzz had started. I passed the design Teams pod. One monitor had the article open. They didn't try to hide it. Do you think it's real? Someone whispered. Doesn't name us, but the description's too close. At my desk, Priya looked up from her laptop. You saw it. I nodded. You okay? Yes. Her voice dropped. Charles hasn't said anything. He won't. Not yet. At 10:32, he called an emergency meeting. Calendar invite. Urgent narrative planning. Subject line. Article response. And just like that, the story he buried came clawing up into the light. Asterisk. The conference room was full. Directors, legal, comms, product. Charles stood at the front, arms folded, expression tight. The article was projected behind him on the screen, cropped to remove the headline but not the code. Let's be clear, he began. This is a coordinated hit. The article makes no direct accusation, but the implications are obvious. No one spoke. We don't engage. Not publicly. Not yet. We do internal assurance, get ahead of the optics. Someone from legal asked, do we know who leaked it? Charles's jaw flexed. No, but we will. He turned to me. Elena, draft a values-centered statement. Emphasize commitment to transparency. No admissions. My voice didn't waver. You want authenticity without accountability. A pause. Then, we'll revise together. I nodded. Of course. The meeting ended in silence. Back at my desk, I opened a blank document. I titled it Integrity Draft 1. I wrote the truth, disguised as diplomacy. I wrapped their mistakes in soft words and made sure none of them sounded like absolution. At 4 o'clock p.m., Jules texted me. It's moving. More eyes. They're talking. I didn't reply. Instead, I looked across the office at Charles. He looked worried. He should have been. It came at 9:03 p.m. Subject line. You think you're untouchable? The email was from Charles. No greeting. No sign-off. Just that single sentence in the body. No punctuation. I stared at it, not with fear, with certainty. He knew, or at least, he suspected. I moved the message into a folder labeled Direct Contact, took a screenshot, logged it into my ledger under a new category. Escalations. I didn't reply. Not because I was scared, but because there was nothing to say. He'd written the same way he'd spoken to me for years. Abrupt, heavy with implication, relying on tone to do the damage. But tone doesn't transfer well in writing. And I was no longer a woman who flinched at shadows. Instead, I forwarded the message to Mara with a single line. Do you consider this threatening? Her reply came 10 minutes later. Legally, no. But professionally, absolutely. Document it, she added. Do not respond. Done. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. The next morning, Charles didn't look at me in the team meeting. He avoided my side of the table. He kept the conversation clipped, directing questions toward product and legal. When someone brought up the article again, he waved it off. No traction outside a few blogs, he said. A lie. We all knew it. Jules's piece had been picked up by industry watchdogs and reblogged by a respected AI ethics board at 10:12 a.m. I updated the risk map. Sees tone shifting to control. Signs of threat emerging. External traction confirmed. At lunch, Priya caught up with me near the elevators. You heard from him. I nodded. What did he say? I told her. Her eyes darkened. Are you okay? I'm clear. She hesitated. He's spiraling. People feel it. He's used to control. He's losing it. Do we keep pushing? I met her gaze. We don't have to. What do you mean? He's unraveling himself. That afternoon, I printed the email and filed it into my locked drawer. It sat between his no one cares quote and a redacted performance review. A trilogy. And like all trilogies, it had one final act coming. The email arrived from a university. Address. Subject. Inquiry. Ethics and Systems Design Guest Perspective. I almost deleted it. But something in the phrasing stopped me. We read the recent article with interest. We'd like to invite you off record, confidential, to share your perspective on ethical culture in tech. You will not be identified or quoted without consent. It was signed, Dr. Renata Shaw, Department of Philosophy and Applied Ethics, Westbridge University. I Googled her. Published. Respected. Calm eyes in her profile photo. I replied the next morning. Happy to speak. Under your terms. We scheduled a call for Thursday, noon. I sat at my kitchen table, laptop open, tea cooling beside me. Thank you for doing this, she said as the screen blinked to life. Her voice was warm, precise. I won't ask about names, she said, just experience. I nodded. Understood. What do you believe silence protects? She asked. I paused. Power, I said. And pattern. It lets both stay invisible. She nodded. Did you ever feel complicit in that silence? I looked down. Yes. Asterisk. Dr. Shaw let the silence stretch. Then, gently. Why did you stop being silent? Because the system didn't misfire. It functioned exactly as designed. And people were getting hurt. She leaned forward slightly. And what gave you the courage to speak? It wasn't courage. It was clarity. The moment I realized I could either protect my future or his. Her pen moved. She wasn't typing. She was listening. What would you tell other women in your position? That documentation is power. That if something feels wrong, it probably is. And that being the calmest person in the room doesn't mean you're complicit, it means you're watching. Dr. Shaw smiled. Would you speak publicly if the time came? I already have, just not with my name. Yet, I returned her smile. Yet, we ended the call with thanks. No promises, just a shared sense that the conversation mattered. After I closed the laptop, I sat still for a while, no adrenaline, no fear, just peace. Like truth had made space for itself in the room. Later that evening, she emailed again. If you ever want to teach guest lecture, consult, we would welcome you. I didn't reply right away, but I saved the message under a new folder. Title: Beginning. The board called a closed session on a Tuesday morning, no agenda, no press release, just a calendar entry marked confidential. Ethics review. By noon, the ripple had reached every department. At 1:17 p.m., Priya leaned across the table during lunch. They brought in an outside consultant, she said, from Bellmark Legal. Compliance oversight. I didn't blink. Good. She lowered her voice. Jason's been in and out of meetings all day. He looks shaken. He should be. At 3:40 p.m., Charles walked past my desk, his jaw locked, eyes bloodshot. His suit looked slept in. By 4 o'clock, I got the ping. Charles Reddick has been placed on administrative leave pending internal investigation. One sentence. No ceremony. I stared at it. Let the words sit. No celebration. Just verification. At 4:17, I got another message. From Priya. Jason resigned. Effective immediately. I opened our folder. Added the update. Saved it. There was no rush. A victory. Just stillness. Like standing in a room after the thunder has rolled through and realizing the walls are still standing. At 5 p.m., Priya stopped by my desk with 2 coffees. She handed me one without speaking. We sat in the break room. The hum of the fridge was the only sound for a while. You know, she said finally, I didn't think it would actually happen. Neither did he. She looked down at her coffee. They offered me Jason's team. I met her eyes. You deserve it. She shook her head slowly. I didn't ask. You didn't have to. You earned it. A long pause. You're staying? She asked. For now. She hesitated. People are watching you differently now. I know. You scare them. Good. We didn't smile. We didn't toast. We just drank in silence to women who had done what no one expected, held the line, and survived it. That night, I updated the final column in the risk map. CR removed. JL resigned. PS promoted. EW witness to it all. I closed the document and shut down my computer, not out of exhaustion, out of completion. Asterisk, I didn't go to the press conference. They held it in the main atrium, polished floors, rented backdrop, carefully prepared remarks from the interim leadership team. I watched it later on mute. I already knew what they'd say. We are committed to transparency, accountability, and a renewed culture of trust. Words I could have written in my sleep. Words I used to write. Instead, that morning, I walked down to the waterfront, where the city thinned out and the air moved slower. The fog hadn't lifted yet. The boats in the harbor looked like outlines, half there, half waiting. I stood at the edge of the dock and let the quiet hold me. No one called. No one asked for comment. And I didn't offer one. Closure doesn't always look like confrontation. Sometimes it's absence. Sometimes it's the choice to walk away, not because you lost, but because you didn't need to win on their terms. Asterisk, 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 asterisk. I sat on a bench with a view of the water and let myself think through everything. Not the facts, I knew those cold. I'd lived them. But the weight, the small betrayals, the days I stayed late to fix problems others caused, the meetings where I was present but unnamed, the times I bit my tongue because the room didn't feel safe. I wrote them all down, one line each, not for vengeance, for release. When I stood to leave, I didn't tear the pages out. I just closed the journal back at home. I lit a single candle. No ceremony, no meaning, just softness. The apartment felt different, somehow larger, like it had been waiting for something to end. And something had. I didn't lose anything. I realized I'd reclaimed what was mine. My voice, my space, my pace. No announcement, no applause, just peace. The letter sat on my desk for 3 days. I wrote it carefully, not angry, not bitter, just clear. Charles, I remembered everything. The meetings you rewrote, the emails you deleted, the code you approved to bury, the silence you demanded. This isn't a threat. It's a record. You'll never forget it. Elena, I read it aloud once, folded it neatly, and then I never sent it. Because power doesn't always need to be spoken. Sometimes it's the letter you write and keep. I placed it in a folder labeled unsent. It wasn't about revenge, it was about closure. I didn't want him to suffer. I wanted him to know. Weeks passed. Occasionally, I'd glance at the letter. A reminder. A weight lifted. I told Mara about it during one of our meetings. She smiled. Sometimes the silence after the letter is the loudest message. I nodded. The letter was mine, not his. One evening, Priya and I sat in the break room after hours. She scrolled her phone. I sipped my tea. You look lighter, she said. I smiled. I wrote him a letter. Did you send it? No. She raised an eyebrow. Will you? I don't think I need to. She nodded, understanding without pressing. The office was silent except for the hum of the vending machine. I used to want an apology, I said. Now I don't care. That's growth. I laughed quietly. It's freedom. Priya smiled. What did you write? Just that I remembered. Everything. She leaned back. That's enough. Later, walking home, I thought about the old version of me, the one who thought closure required confrontation. But some things don't need an audience. Some things are for you alone. I opened my journal that night and wrote beneath the letter, letting go is sometimes the last, quiet act of defiance. I closed the journal and slept, dreamlessly. The story kept moving after I stopped pushing. Jules's article was picked up by national outlets. My inbox filled with interview requests, all wanting my perspective, none knowing my name. I declined everyone. The recognition wasn't what I wanted. What mattered was that people were talking, debating, asking questions about bias and silence, about the power of the single no one cares. The company released another statement, this time signed by the interim CEO. We are committed to a full review, it said. We thank those who brought issues forward. It was carefully worded. No apology, no direct admission, but the world. Read between the lines. Priya forwarded me a thread from an industry Slack. Someone inside must have had receipts. Whoever did it, thank you. If you see something, say something. Quiet doesn't mean weak. I scrolled through the messages. My heart stayed calm. This was bigger than me now. Jules emailed again. The story's shortlisted for 2 awards. If you ever want your name attached, say the word. I replied simply, the story's enough. Let it stand. Some mornings, I'd wake to find new think pieces. Quiet power in corporate America. The hidden cost of erased voices. Whistleblowers without names, each one drew lines between what happened and what people needed to learn. Not just about Charles. Not just about me. About the cost of silence and the strength it takes to break it quietly, precisely. Without spectacle, one afternoon, as I left the office for the last time, I caught a glimpse of my own reflection in the lobby glass. I looked like someone who'd been rewritten not by others, but by choice. On the street outside, I paused and watched people pass by. None of them knew the story was mine. That was how I wanted it. Let the world care. Let them debate. Protest. Push for change. My name didn't need to be attached. My work was done. I moved through the first weeks of freedom like a woman learning how to breathe differently. The nonprofit's welcome was quiet but sincere, just a plain desk, a laptop, and a mission statement that started with equity instead of profit. My mornings slowed. I brewed tea, watched the sunlight change across the floorboards. I built my work hours around meaning, not meetings. My first assignment was to advise on a community tech project, an open source hiring platform designed to resist bias, the very thing I'd fought to expose. On my first video call, a woman named Araceli asked, "You've worked in corporate, right? Any lessons?" I smiled. "Document everything. Trust your instincts. Remember that silence is a tool, but not a shield." She nodded. "We could use more people like you." The words felt light, earned. Some afternoons, I'd walk to the park, notebook in hand, and sit beneath a line of oaks. I'd jot ideas for the project, draft emails, write lists of the things I never wanted to forget, the signs of erasure, the feel of real support, the difference between quiet and powerless. One day, Priya called. "You sound happy," she said. "I am." She hesitated. "I took the team lead role." "I'm glad. You deserve it." She laughed softly. "Do you miss any of it?" "Not the meetings. Not the silence. Maybe the fight. But now I get to build, not just defend." Later, as dusk settled, I made tea and sat by the window. I watched people move through their evenings, all in their own stories. For the first time in years, I felt seen by myself, not by a boss, not by a company. I had a new beginning, on my terms, and I didn't need anyone's permission. *********.